Once upon a time, Egyptian slaves were tortured by the ruler. But one of the escapes during a workday. No one found him again. He kept walking in the desert and suddenly the sand sucked him into the chamber. As he regains his senses, the Egyptian slave realizes that he is trapped in the chamber. The sand that had sucked him in has sealed the entrance shut, leaving him no way to escape. He looks around, trying to get his bearings, but the chamber is pitch black, and he can barely see his hand in front of his face. Feeling his way along the wall, the slave eventually comes across a torch. He strikes a flint and lights the torch, and suddenly, the chamber is bathed in flickering light. However, the shadows play tricks on his mind, and he feels as if he's being watched. As he makes his way deeper into the chamber, he hears strange noises echoing off the walls. There is the sound of water dripping, the rustle of movement, and the scuttle of unseen creatures. Each new sound makes him feel more and more uneasy, and he starts to wonder if he is alone in the chamber. Suddenly, the floor gives way beneath his feet, and the slave falls into a pit filled with scorpions and other venomous creatures. He struggles to climb out while avoiding their deadly stings, but eventually, he manages to pull himself out of the pit, battered and bruised. The slave keeps walking, trying to find a way out of the chamber when he comes across a giant statue. It towers over him, and its eyes seem to glow in the flickering torchlight. The slave can feel a sense of dread building inside him as he approaches the statue, but he can't turn back now. As he gets closer, he notices that the walls of the chamber are covered in strange symbols and hieroglyphics. They tell a story of a long-forgotten curse, warning of the terrible fate that awaits those who disturb the tomb. Finally, the slave feels a cold breath on the back of his neck, as if someone or something is standing right behind him. When he turns around, he sees a figure emerging from the shadows. It is a mummified corpse wrapped in bandages and holding a staff. The slave realizes that he is face to face with an ancient Egyptian pharaoh, and he knows that he is in grave danger. The pharaoh could start to move towards the slave, slowly but with purpose, as if to intimidate him. The slave could feel his heart racing as he tries to find a way to escape. But the pharaoh's gaze could hold him in place, making him unable to move or speak. The pharaoh could speak in a voice that sounds like it was coming from beyond the grave, commanding the slave to bow down before him. The slave could feel a sense of dread wash over him, realizing that he was at the mercy of this powerful being. The pharaoh could raise his staff, and the walls of the chamber could start to shake and crumble. The slave could feel debris raining down around him as he tries to dodge the falling rocks. As the chamber collapses around them, the slave could see the pharaoh's bandages start to unravel, revealing a grotesque skeletal face. The pharaoh could let out a bone-chilling laugh, and the slave knows that he was in mortal danger. With no way out, the slave could prepare for the worst, as the pharaoh raises his staff to strike. But just as the staff is about to make contact, the slave could awaken from his nightmare, realizing that it was all just a horrific vision. Panting and covered in sweat, the slave could look around and realize that he was still trapped in the dark chamber. He could gather his courage and continue his search for a way out, hoping to escape the horrors that lie within. As the statue's words echoed through the chamber, a bright light enveloped the slave, and he felt a surge of power coursing through his veins. He could feel himself getting stronger and more resilient with each passing moment until he was almost invincible. The pain of the past, the torture and suffering inflicted upon him by his captors, now seemed like a distant memory. He knew that he could withstand any pain or torture that the ruler might inflict upon him in the future. Then, the light faded away, and the statue spoke again. "Your second wish has also been granted," it said. "Your land is now independent and wealthy, and its people can live freely and happily. They owe their freedom and happiness to you, and they will remember you for generations to come." The slave felt a sense of relief and happiness wash over him. He knew that he had made the right choice and that his sacrifices would be worth it. He felt proud to have used his wishes to benefit others, and he knew that his legacy would live on long after he was gone. As he turned to leave the chamber, he felt a sudden pain in his chest, and he knew that his time was up. But he didn't feel afraid or regretful. Instead, he felt content, knowing that he had made a difference in the world and that his wishes had been granted. The next day, the slaves found that they no longer felt any pain when the ruler tortured them. They were filled with strength and resilience that they had never experienced before. The ruler was amazed and confused by their sudden transformation. He demanded to know what had happened, but the slaves kept their secret. As time passed, the land prospered and the people lived happily and freely. The man who had made the wish on the giant statue was never forgotten, and his memory lived on. His family and friends were filled with gratitude for the gift of freedom that he had given them. Years later, a group of explorers stumbled upon the same chamber where the man had made his wish. They found the giant statue and inscription that told the story of the man's selfless wish. They realized then that the man had sacrificed his life for the freedom of others. The story of the man's wish spread far and wide, and people from all over the world came to visit the statue and pay their respects to the man who had given so much. The land continued to prosper, and the memory of the man who had made the wish was never forgotten.